podcast. It's Andrea Gribble. I am all warmed up because it's January and it is chilly in Wisconsin. But we're going to heat things up in today's interview with Ted Neitzke. He is the CEO at CESA 6. He is a lifetime educator and he has so much passion for schools. He is going to tell you all about a podcast that he leads called the Smart Thinking Podcast. We're going to dive into the story of the buffalo and why we want to be like the buffalo and not the cow. He's going to talk about the power of celebrating your school. Like, you guys, it's a tough job in school communications, but we have this opportunity to celebrate the heck out of what's happening in our schools, and our staff need that support right now. And so he's going to give you a whole bunch of ideas. He's going to kind of give you some tough love of stop saying, nobody sends me anything. We've got to make the time to find those stories. And then we're going to end with a little bit of talk because he's really passionate about some Swift surveys, which I love that. If you're an NSPR member, if you're going for your APR, we know that it's all, communication is all about, diving into the data first. He's got a really simple solution with some one question surveys, and you're going to find out all about it. So I can't wait to introduce you to Ted. Before we get into today's interview, I want to remind you that I have a special going on with my membership group. So I serve you with a lot of free content, but I serve about 300 school districts in my private little community. It's a membership program. And normally you have to sign up for a whole year. Well, I've got a special going on now through February 14th, where if you want to try out the membership, you can do it for $300 for 6 months. And so that's you and 2 other people from your school district can be part of our membership program, which provides weekly training sessions, webinars, sessions, access to a Canva directory, and support from fellow school PR people all around the world, all for one low price of $300 for the 6 months. Imagine it's like a support group that actually gets you, that really understands school PR. We're here for you 7 days a week. And so we would love to be able to support you in there. You can try it out by heading over to socialschool4edu.com. You can just say, hey, I want to join now, and sign up, and you'll have that option of joining for just $300. So now with that, let's get on to today's interview with Ted Neitzke. All right, today's K-12 PR tip is all about celebrating your staff. You guys, it's a new year, 2022, but of course we're trying to just survive to the end of the school year in some cases. And our staff, our support staff, teaching staff, administration is feeling some of the burnout. One of the things that you can instantly do to make things better is start proactively celebrating what your staff is doing. They're going above and beyond right now. People are out sick and they're giving up their free time. We've got substitutes that are doing amazing things. We've got teachers that are really doing innovative things in the classroom. Let's focus on celebrating the heck out of those staff members via social media. So it can be simple staff features. It can be, hey, I'm going to make sure that I get out into the buildings as much as I can, and find those stories of celebrating those staff members. It's going to help morale. It's going to really shine a light on the great things they're doing, giving them the love and grace and support that they deserve. So I really want to challenge you with this tip. Look at what you're doing to celebrate your staff, and let's up the level. Let's try to maybe double it, right? If you're doing one feature a week, let's add another story. And if you're doing nothing, at least get up to once a week where you're really trying to shine and find those stories of your staff going above and beyond. All right, now let's get into today's interview with Ted, who's going to give you some more ideas on how to celebrate staff. Let's get started. Welcome to the podcast, Ted Neitzke. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, 2 Wisconsinites coming at our listeners today. So, and I've got my woolly jacket on because it's chilly. It's January, so
yeah, it's a balmy 6.
Just you hear these other states get cold weather, and it's like, oh my gosh, not like what we have. Ted, I got the chance to meet you at the Whisper Conference in Wisconsin this fall. Loved your chat with all of our school communicators, and I wanted to have you on the podcast. Now, most of my listeners are not going to know who you are, so why don't you just kind of share your background and the many roles that you serve, which you mentioned like 4 of them before we chatted. One being mayor. So yeah, explain that.
So I'm a lifetime public educator. I started my career as a high school and middle school social studies teacher, and then became an administrator. Was a principal of a very large middle school, 1,000 sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. So I have my fill of lifetime experiences with kids with unwashed armpits and zits. So it was awesome. And from there, I went into district administration and became a superintendent. I was a superintendent of schools of a 7,000 student school district here in Wisconsin, West Bend Joint School District. And then from there, I went to my current role, which is I am the executive director and CEO of an education service agency in the state of Wisconsin, CESA 6. And for fun, I'm the mayor of Port Washington, where I have now served that role for about a year, and have just been very passionate about service my whole life. And I was very active in nonprofits and those different pieces, but COVID hit, and suddenly we stopped meeting and stopped doing things, and my terms ran out, and I was like, oh, no, I'm going to serve my community. So became mayor. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm an uncle, a brother, all those awesome things. Those are the most important things to me. Those my two favorite titles are dad and uncle. So
Awesome.
all of the other ones matter a lot in the moment, but over the course of my life, my favorite thing is to be a dad and uncle.
And then you also do some like work on boards, right? Or volunteer stuff, right?
Yeah. So I've served as president of a few nonprofit boards, run United Way campaigns, and then I have my own podcast,
Yes.
the Smart Thinking podcast, which comes out every week, which is developed around driving people's leadership skills and making you think about kind of your week coming up and reflect and talking about timely problems. Like you, my mission really there is passion, because I don't get paid for it and I don't make any money. I just have fun with it, and produce that each week.
So the Smart Thinking podcast, which I've been a listener of since we met. When did you start that podcast?
So I am in my 3.5 years ago. So I just published my 215th episode this past Sunday. And it's kind of an interesting story, right? So I was listening to podcasts 4 or 5 years ago. I drive a lot. I just am curious by nature. I like to hear other people's stuff. And I had done a keynote at a school district down in the south part of Wisconsin on the Illinois border. And when I was all done, this 24-year-old teacher came up to me and she's like, "Hey, I want to hear more from you." And I was like, that is something very few people say to me. And she was like, "No, seriously, you should start a podcast." So that seeded with me, and it was like, I should start a podcast. What would I talk about? And then, I launched the Smart Thinking podcast just to get people to reflect upon their leadership and their skills, and then bring tools. And it was fun. And it's one of those great things, because I define leadership as anyone who has influence over another person. And, here I was, 45 years old, being stretched into an element of technology that I was familiar with, but I didn't know how to record and produce and get music rights and all that stuff. And this great young woman pushed me into an area, and it's been awesome. Whisper gave me an award for it a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, so it's pretty awesome.
That is great. Well, this podcast was my COVID project, and I had wanted to start a podcast for years and was scared. And then finally, when you couldn't go anywhere, I was like, okay, this weekend
Yeah.
I'm going to start a podcast. And guess what? It wasn't as hard as I thought. And it's super fun because I love talking to people. So that's a great story, and I'm really glad. And I can tell after being at one of your presentations why somebody would want to hear more from you, because it was very an inspirational talk. I just have to say I was just in Vegas.
Oh,
Safely in Vegas over the holiday break, and there was one slot machine. I don't play slot machines, but I kept walking past it. And it had a big picture of, guess what it had on it? Can you guess, Ted?
I'm gonna guess a buffalo.
It had a
No.
huge buffalo, and then it got me excited for this conversation that we were going to have. But I really loved the story of the buffalo. I think it pertains exactly to the school communicators out there that are listening. So, can you kind of share that story with everybody?
Yeah. So years back, I had learned about this concept where American bison or buffalo that live on the Western Plains in the United States have a very, very cool behavior, and it's instinctive. And what the buffalo have learned over millennia is that every day there will be a storm, right, in one part of Colorado or Wyoming or Montana. And the buffalo have grown and evolved to this beautiful behavior where when they hear the thunder and they see the lightning, they immediately start walking towards the storm. And then when the storm is impacting them, they charge, they run into it. And it's a very powerful metaphor because too often we have the inverted behavior, which is that of a cow. So the cow, who's not native to North America, has a very different behavior when a storm approaches, and that's that they turn their tail to it and they look to what was. So they look at the old weather pattern, right? So they face east where there might still be blue skies, and then they long for that. And then they start to walk towards it. They don't run or charge, they just walk towards it. And what ends up happening is that's the pessimist. That's the procrastinator, the person who's like, well, maybe the storm will go away, maybe, and they try to outwalk it. Well, in my experience as a leader and a father and a friend, I just see so many people turn their tail to the realities that they're facing and then try to outwalk it. But the reality is that the cow is now stuck in the storm longer because they are literally walking with the weather pattern. Where what the buffalo have learned is that if you charge into it, so if I run west while this is heading east and I take on my challenge and I take the time to actually address it and I don't ignore it and I'm proactive, I get out of it faster and I find the sunshine or the stars and I'm safer. Where the cow mindset is they endure more pain. And educators, people, leaders, I'm shocked by how many people always try to avoid change, conflict. I just put on my podcast the other day, I was shocked to learn that I want to say almost 40 to 50% of people who are given a prescription to maintain their own health never go pick it up. And that's a cow behavior, right? Like I'm a buffalo. Well, you need me to get 17 shots to make sure that I can live to be, put them in my eyeball, get it over with, whatever I have to do. And when you can create a culture where you can create the conditions that make it safe for people to take risks and fail fast and run with a herd of people, whew, is it fun. And I'm blessed to work in an organization where I would say, well, I know because we have high engagement that we have a buffalo type of culture. And school communicators, I think, need to be right up front of that herd, providing the information so that people can charge into things with knowledge instead of running away from it with ignorance. So that's what a buffalo is.
And everybody listening right now is naming who is a buffalo at their school and who are
Right.
the cows, right?
And here's the deal. You can start out in the moment turning your tail to it. But then you have to immediately reflect and do a 180 and at least face it. And then surround yourself with the people who give you the courage to charge into it. You talk to people who have survived significant trauma and come out of it stronger, and you listen to what they thought and what they did, and what they talk about is their mindset. They talk about minimizing their choices so that, like, I can choose to be happy in this moment. I can. Versus the people who turn their back and are like, I have to, if I didn't need to. And unfortunately, cultures are dominated by those voices because most buffaloes are humble people who just turn and go take it on. And cows love to be envious. Oh, look at the mighty buffaloes. Look at their beautiful horns. Look at their big, thick chaps. Oh, I wish I could be like that. You can be. And it's just a choice. And what I struggle with, and we talk about this in our house a lot, is that you can have a bad moment, but your bad moment cannot anchor anybody else. And your bad moment can only be in the moment. And I had someone a few months ago say to me, "You're toxically positive." And it set me on my heels. So I was like, well, I don't even know what that means. How those are contradictory terms, right? So then I researched it, looked it up, and I thought, I'm not toxically positive. Toxically positive is ignoring the reality of what's going on and saying crazy things to people like, well, I'm sorry your dog died. It happened for a reason. Like that's toxic positivity. True positivity is the recognition and understanding that we have today and we need to utilize every minute in the day. And I can wallow for a couple, but not all of them. And cows love to just stand frozen and blame and look for excuses. And unfortunately, when you're born caffeinated like me, standing still is not an option. And then when you've had the life experiences I've had, uh, I don't have bad days anymore. You've got to take what you've learned and go. And the dumpster fire of 2021 is over. And right now, January 2022 is going to be really, really hard. But we can stand around and do nothing, or we can charge. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty darn rewarding to be exhausted at the end of a great optimistic day, knowing that you put everything out there, and then when you close your eyes, the sun will rise again. Versus sitting there trying to figure out like, why is it still raining? Well, if you walk with the dark clouds, you get surrounded by them.
Right. Oh, that's so true. And you talk about, we're starting a new year. Many of the school communicators listening are feeling stressed and burnt out, but it is the beginning of the new year. What have you seen from school communicators going through this, and what advice do you have to kind of keep them going through the rest of this school year? Because now that Christmas break, holiday break is over, is kind of the next thing that you're looking forward to is spring break and end of the year. What kind of advice can you share for those folks listening?
Number one, you have one of the most important jobs in the system, if not the most important job. I should back that up. The kindergarten teachers have the most important job. But school communicators are what we would say in Wisconsin, pert near close to first, which means very close to first. And what needs to occur is that the school communications people, the PR people, need to drive the conversations with facts. They need to provide the data. They need to lead the story, and they need to turn the narratives to demonstrate all of the amazing things that are going on in schools. So, right, yesterday, the biggest school districts in the country flipped virtual with 24, 36, 72-hour notices. I mean, I can't even imagine being those school communicators, hearing that a political decision was made or pressure from outside forces or teachers associations, and then trying to communicate the positivity of that nature, right? When every parent and family is significantly impacted. Like I'll give you an example on a micro pre-COVID example. When I was superintendent, I worked with our comms person. And one of the things that is unique in the Midwest and the northern part of the United States is snow days. And I know once in a while they happen in Virginia, right? They get a dusting of snow and everybody's got bald tires, so they shut down the schools. But here, we need 4, 6, 8 inches of snow to shut down the schools. And parents would always get upset, like, why are we open today? It's not safe, and it's 2 inches of snow or whatever. And I thought, like, every time I am responding or reacting to these angry parents. And we were like, that's it. So what we started to do was at the end of September, we would mail home every family a postcard. And on the postcard, it demonstrated these are the conditions that need to be met in order for school to be closed. Please post them. And like number one was, we will not be listening to weather people, right? Because every weatherman and woman's on there like, snowstorm of death approaching this Thursday. News at 6. And then every parent's like, are you going to have school on Thursday? First of all, it's Saturday, and weather's always late. They're only accurate on temperatures. And yeah, we're going to have school on Thursday. So my point is, we would put all these criteria in place. None of that criterion was put in place when they closed those schools this time. Nobody knew that was coming. And one of the things I think that the directors of communication need to do is drive in all the narratives of the amazing things going on in schools. And like I said to you when we were together, I think they need to get the old fashioned reporter hats back on, put a little card in there that says scoop or reporter, and engage themselves in every planning meeting, in the curricular discussions, and just sit back and be a fly on the wall and think to yourself, how can I proactively begin to communicate this change? Right? And number one is, how can you advocate and create the story of the amazing things that staff are doing? Right? So I'll read in the newspaper like the superintendent's driving the bus. That's really cute. That's great. That shows the depth. But there's one superintendent. There are 100 teachers. And what are the stories of, how many teachers on Tuesday, very specifically on Tuesday, gave up their planning period, subbed, provided information and materials? How many teachers this week were out with COVID? How many substitutes did we have? And almost creating like the daily report of the amazing LIFTSs. I have that Midwest accent, so it sounds like three words. But what are the amazing lifts that are occurring that should be promoted? And then leading the narrative, right? Because if school has to be closed on a Friday because too many teachers are ill, there will be skepticism behind that. They'll blame the union. They'll say the board is weak. They'll look to cast blame. But if there's proactive narratives that are going out and constant recognition and celebration of the efforts, that's a whole different story. And that's where I think the greatest opportunity for improvement comes into play for school communications people, because superintendents, principals, teachers are literally walking into every day with a mindset of kind of what's going to happen, and it's all going sideways. And that's why schools are kind of tough places to be right now, because there's zero predictability. So if one of the predictable things is that we will be celebrated and recognized for our efforts and the extra things that we are doing, teachers are going to be able to stick around a little bit longer. We'll have better retention. We'll have workplaces that get the reputation that, they really care about us. Look how they promote us. Look what they talk about. Look how they recognize our micro efforts that lead to macro outcomes. And that's where I think we're missing it, right? So most comms people are sitting in their office working on a newsletter, updating the website, and then all of a sudden, I always kind of envision like Kramer from Seinfeld, right? Comes flying into the comms office like, oh my gosh, right? And then that person's like, immediately like starts whacking away and trying to there's so many proactive ways to put things together. Not that many buses slide into the ditch. Not that many kids there aren't that many lockdowns. So reversing your time to have all of these great strategies in place to proactively talk about it. When you look at Facebook and will follow social media, I've always tracked all those things, right? So we'll post a picture of a kindergartner, granny style throwing in a free throw and making it in the playground going crazy, right? That'll get 52,000 hits and likes and 400 comments. But you put up there, something about this Wednesday is a professional development day for the school district. And, we're hoping that kids can engage in smart activities. 2 likes, right? So we know what we need to do. We know that if you put an image of a child up there and then celebrate below it, you'll get high engagement. Yet we continue to drumbeat things that nobody listens to, nobody watches. People run for school board saying this district has bad communication. Communications person's losing their mind because they put out 55 things in the last 2 weeks, and people just aren't engaged. So that was a really long rant about engage proactively with as many celebrations as possible.
Yeah. And to realize the gift that we have as school communicators to be the one that get to reflect and shine that mirror, shine that spotlight on staff doing amazing things, on those students doing amazing things, because our communities, they need the good news right now. And our staff, certainly need to be supported. Our families need to be supported, and good news helps with that. And even though, like you said, it's easy to get in reactive mode and all the negative that we can't control, we do have the ability to control these positive stories getting out there. And this is the Mastering Social Media for Schools podcast. So it's perfect that, you brought up things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And it's not hard to get those stories out there. They're happening every day, Ted. We just got to
Right.
capture them and get them out there, right?
Well, and here's something else I would challenge your followers on. Stop saying no one sends me anything. Right? So I get it every time I'm with a school PR person or communicator. I ask everybody to send me pictures and tell me what's going on, and they don't. The last thing on a teacher principal's mind is how to self promote. That is not in their genetic code. It's just not. And if it is, you probably don't want to self promote that person. So that's why you being out there and booking out an hour a day, and I don't want to hear you're too busy. I get that you're too busy, but change your habits and go to a school and take the pictures and talk to the teachers and announce that you'll be there. Have the principal show you things that are going on. Get the quantitative stories and information to give you all of the great seasoning that when you're writing an article, you can remember back to, you know, Mrs. Mariah Smith in fourth grade is doing the, Indigenous Peoples unit this week. And it was really, really exciting because they brought in two tribal leaders and the students learned about the history and heritage of the land in which the school was on versus, we're not calling it Columbus Day anymore in our district and blah, blah, blah. And then outrage and Fox News or CNN calling. It's insane. Now, the other thing I wanted to share with you, because this is very timely, yesterday I did a keynote to start the second half of the year for a school district. Had a ton of teachers in the audience, threw up a QR code, and did a poll asking them to identify using one word what would fuel them to get them through the second half of the year. Okay? And this is critical because we don't ask staff that. What happens is 4 or 5 administrators, the PR, whoever's on the cabinet, they get in a room together and they're like, okay, I think they'd like Domino's pizza and coffee mugs and blah. And then it lands flat. And then the administrators are resentful for the lack of gratitude. And it's like, no, that's not, you're giving us things we don't need, right? I don't need another cardigan sweater, Grandma, for Christmas. You gave me one last year, right? So ask me. So I asked them, and here's what they said. They want encouragement. They want collaboration time. They want to be trusted. They want more teamwork. The word love is up there. This is a public school. They want time and support, positivity, communication, more routines, understanding, flexibility, grace, support, patience, empathy. This does not say more money. It does not say less students. It does not say no new things. It says, treat me like a person. So if I'm in school communications and I see something like this, what I'm going to say to myself is, okay, what can I do up there? I can do the recognition part. I can do the promotional part. I can give the grace. I can provide the data to fuel the community to be greater and more empathetic, to understand what our teachers are going through. So if we have to call a day on Friday where, because we don't have enough staff, or because the staff has, they're at 99% of the tank of mental health overdrive, then the community will respond by saying, that story is out. We get what they're doing for our children, and they deserve X, Y, and Z. And the word grace is like, yes, as a school comms person, I can provide the fuel for grace from the community by saying, this week, 31 of our 111 teachers were out due to health-related issues from the pandemic. 22 kids in first grade out of 50 had a substitute teacher 4 or more times this week. And we want to thank the subs and the teachers who stepped in there and helped with that planning. That's the kind of stuff. Because right now, I don't get paid to stay home and I don't. Okay, we've heard it. We're entering year 2 of this when we hit March. What a great calling if you're a school comms person.
Right. Oh, that's really powerful. And what the staff need are all things that can't be purchased, and we don't need to worry about the budget that way. It's more budgeting the time, the focus, grace, patience, love. I love it all. really powerful. Now, you mentioned you just did a keynote. Ted, do you speak around the country?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to put a plug in for Ted. Ted did not ask me to do this, but Ted is an excellent speaker. And as you can tell already, really understands education and has a passion for this. I just want to put a plug in for Ted. Look him up and book him for your convocation, for a mid-year like revival, because his message is really, really powerful. And he does a really great job. And Ted, I just have to say, it's like you head up, which is not an easy task, a CEO of a CESA 6. But I'm going to admit, I was skeptical. I'm like, really? This is one of our keynotes at Wispra, and you blew me away. It was so awesome and so engaging, so energetic. The stories you told were so powerful. And it really left me with that, hey, like you said, leadership is anybody who has the power to influence, anything or anyone, which all of our school members, our educators, our support staff, they do. And so that's what you get when you chat with them, right?
Yeah. Well, and you were very kind there, so thank you. But you get my definition of leadership as anyone who has influence over another person. And again, as directors and the drivers of the narrative of the district or the school that you're working in, you get to be the storyteller, right? I mean, you're the author, and the words you use and the tone and the voice, the enthusiasm. Too many people in this business think that their job is to have to tell all the bad stories. This happened today, or the school board cut the budget, or the state of Wisconsin, or the state of Montana, or Texas, whatever. No, I mean, get into the schools. I mean, if I had like the ability to just to have like 5 or 6 people when I was superintendent of schools, right? 7,000 student district, 13 buildings. I mean, every day I would have them out there for the first half of the day, just interviewing staff. Because you know who's got some amazing stories? The lunch lady, the janitor, a bus driver. Stories of warmth and compassion and kindness. And public and private schools get beat up all the time because one mom or one angry grandma or uncle go on Facebook and they blast something about the school, and all these disengaged, angry people lump on, and they're the same voices on every negative website. But then we go into reaction mode and think everybody's mad at us, when at the end of the day, it's like, hey, listen, we're going to do a profile on Mr. You know, Mr. Smith, and he's a bus driver who's also a janitor, and he works 60 hours a week, and he's retired, but he works 60 hours a week because he loves the kids, and the kids call him Mr. S, and he plays these games with them, and he mentors at-risk kids, and blah, 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 blah. And he's in our community, right? Like, that's going to get 1,200 hits because we all see what blows up on Facebook. I'm waiting for the school comms person to be a master of TikTok. 30, 50-second great videos of teachers doing neat things, kids doing neat things. Those things go viral fast. And again, like, I'll bang on it all the time. If you're a Buffalo in your mind and you recognize your influence, you will charge into all of the neat little opportunities in your district and your purview. And you'll promote people who are too humble to do it themselves. They'll be mad at you, but let it go, because it's not about them. It's about the kids we serve, making sure that we have the conditions so that they're successful.
Yeah.
Politics only get hairy for schools when they can't communicate.
Yeah. Very true. A lot of wisdom in this, Ted. I'm taking a lot of notes out of this, and we're already kind of coming up on our end time together. So as we and you, again, you've talked about a lot already, but for social media, what would be your number one tip for those school communicators that are listening right now?
Proactive data with a beautiful narrative, a short paragraph with a picture, inquiry-based posts, asking for advice from the community, being proactive. One of the things I shared with you was this idea of swift surveys, right? So we're in an era now where people expect school board members and superintendents to be politicians. They are not politicians. They're kid-based, community-driven people entering the most low level of democracy in our nation. But again, there are more school board members than any other group in the whole country in our democracy. And the world expects them to have polls and know what's going on in their community. And most school board members, like, oh, right, okay, back in. I'm the mayor. I get 2 emails a week from community members, and everybody think you'd get like hundreds, right? Like, where's my garbage? There's a cat in my yard. Nothing. And school board members are the same way. So when they go to vote, they vote based upon what they're hearing from the superintendent, who's, she or he is hearing from the region or Rotary Club, and then all of a sudden they do something, and then 2 weeks later, 400 people are there going nuts because we don't have proactive data. So comms people on social media, swift surveys. Do you think what is your stance on mandatory masking? It should be optional. It should be mandatory, right? And depending on your demographics in your community, you're going to get different results. But then the board gets that before they make a decision so that they can anticipate what's going to happen. Opposed to they make a decision and then all hell breaks loose because they can't. Why is everybody so upset about this, right? So swift surveys. Now, bless the comms people in the world who send out the school district is asking and inquiring on your ideas, and we have 44 questions below we'd like to ask you. Are you male or female, or do you not? What's your age? How many children do you have? One question. That's it. And people, you'll get high levels of engagement on one question because everybody gets their oil changed and nobody likes to answer the 34 questions after an oil change, right? And then if you don't answer it, then you get a phone call and then you get, right? But if the school district gets in the habit of like biweekly swift surveys, people will look for them. If they're easy, like on Twitter or Facebook, and they could just like click, 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 and then they can see the responses in live time, that's community engagement. That's direct stakeholder engagement, and it's proactive. That's what a Buffalo comms person would do. They would want to charge into it and get the information. Now, the independently elected board may or may not take the information, but at least they've got a proactive. And I mean, what does that cost? 7 minutes?
Right.
And with so much technology at our you could put QR codes up. They just weekly survey goes right up on the doors or goes home in the Wednesday folder for elementary school kids. I would participate in those things. I hate when I get the following survey will take between 15 and 48 years for you to complete, right? So that's how I believe it needs to be utilized because, again, simple, proactive. And I don't know, I'm going off on this, but I think that, again, school districts err in the eye of the community by coming across arrogant because we say things like, I am Dr. Ted Neitzke and I am really smart and and we say things like preponderance of evidence and the research says. Nobody cares. What they want to know is what's in this for me, how's it going to impact my family, and why are you doing it? And great communicators answer those three questions based upon data that does not have a heartbeat, so we do not emotionally respond to it. We just take it and we go. And here's what the people around us want. At the end of the day, there's only one group of people who have a right to be in the schools, and it is certainly not the adults. It's the children.
Right.
And we got to do what's best for them. And sometimes their parents actually know better than we do. And that's why COVID has taught, if anybody walks away from this in 3 years without recognizing that we poked the bears by telling families what was best for them, when you poke somebody, like I told you guys, there's three groups of people you don't engage with. People who buy ink by the barrel, people who have fast thumbs and nothing to lose on their Twitter account, and people who you're challenging their values. And the UPS guy just came over, and that's my dog.
And that puppy is saying it is time to go. Well, Ted, this is great. I'm sure people are going to want to learn more from you and stay connected. So what's the best way to stay connected to you?
I don't know. We can just talk every week. No.
Well, they
Well,
can
I mean,
listen to you on your podcast, right?
so you can go on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts and just go to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm on Twitter at T Neitzke and then at Smart Think Podcast. And you can just email me. My email is ted at CESA6.org, and it's the number six. Or you can just Google me, and weirdly it pops up. So I mean, and
Okay.
again, I
Awesome.
like, just in closing, like, I'm just really passionate about the success of children, and the success of children is only fueled by the decisions of the adults who are in their who are charged with their care. And people in communications, I can't tell you enough. You've got the most important job other than those kindergarten teachers, because you will inform the community and you will drive the narrative. People don't read newspapers anymore. People read things in online content. They look for quick word bubbles. They look for swift information and surveys. They look for data, and then they move on with their day. They are not sitting around thinking about us all day like we think they are. And they're looking for talking points. And the last thing I would tell you is, the more stories the kids can tell about what's going on at school to their parents, the more likely that we will be doing our jobs well.
Students are great storytellers, so I love that advice. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, Ted. Everybody listening, I hope feels very inspired. You have a very important role in your school district. Don't let that be heavy. Let that kind of lift you up in the power that you have to really shape and tell those stories that are happening every day, despite some of the challenges, obviously, that we're facing. But thank you so much for spending time with us today, Ted.
Yeah, you're welcome. This was fun. Be well.
Awesome. All right. Yes, everybody, let's make 2022 a great year. Keep telling those stories, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.